Hey everyone, I thought I would make a how-to video on how to swap out the wireless charging pad for your cell phone in your 2016 or 2017 Camaro. The one that came in the car will not charge the new iPhone 8 or the iPhone X. Fortunately, recently GM released a new part that you can swap out your existing wireless charging unit with this one, and it also comes with a harness that you'll need. Now you can get the part, at any of those discount GM parts online stores, or probably on eBay or maybe even Amazon. And this is the part number that you will need: 845-26978. And I believe I paid around $70 for the part, so it's not too bad. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is pop off the knee pads on either side of your console. To do that, you're going to simply want to put your thumbs here and push up. Here we go. As you can see, there's two clips on the bottom that fit into here. That's why you want to push it up. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. But the important part is, once we get that open, we're going to want to take out these two bolts. To remove the bolts, you're going to want to use a 10mm. See that? 10mm socket, or screwdriver type wrench like this, and loosen them up. You do not need to remove this bolt. This is just holding this knee pad panel in place to the main console. Okay, once you remove both of those bolts from the driver's side and the passenger side, you're going to want to go ahead and move your seats all the way forward, both driver and passenger, to kind of give you some room in the back to work. Okay, once you get the seats up, you're going to notice on both the driver and passenger side of the center console here, there is a plastic cover here, and you can see there's a little notch there. So I would recommend using, I wouldn't use a flathead screwdriver because you'll probably end up scratching your car, but if you have an interior trim plastic removal tool, something like this, something small enough you could fit in that slot, pop it open with something like that. If all you have is a flathead, maybe put some electrical tape over it or something like that, just to protect your car from getting scratched. It looks like it doesn't totally come off, but enough to give you access to another bolt. You can pull it back, you can see the bolt. It's going to be another 10mm bolt on both the driver and passenger side. We'll go ahead and loosen those up, and we'll move on to the next step. Make sure you carefully pull it out so you don't drop it down in there. And you're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. Okay, now that we got all the bolts out, you're going to want to put both the passenger and driver seat all the way up and tilt them forward. This will give you plenty of access to the rear of the console. And what we're going to want to do is lift. You can kind of see underneath here, it's tucked down in there, kind of underneath the rear pad here, rear seat. So we're going to want to take our time and kind of wiggle that up carefully as we're pushing this back. And take a little wiggle in here to kind of get it out. As you can see, once you kind of get it from one side, I kind of started with the driver's side. Luckily, it's kind of like a hard, heavy-duty cloth, not all leather. And once you kind of get a corner up, then you can come back to the passenger side and kind of work your way up. Here we go. We were able to loosen the back part of the console up, and now you can see you can move it and gain access to the wireless charging pad unit. There's going to be 4 bolts underneath, which I'll show in a minute here. You can see them here, the tops of them. We'll take those out from underneath, remove the unit, unplug it from its harness, and then get the new one in there. Okay, so the next step is you're going to want to prop the rear of the console up with something. I just used a roll of the heavy-duty paper towels. Seemed to be perfect. Gives you just enough height to get into the workspace here. Here is your old unit. There are 2, I believe those are hex. I'll confirm here in a minute what size you need. But you're gonna have 2 hex screws on either end, as well as the existing harness that we're gonna wanna unplug. So let's get started with the harness. All right guys, so I removed the harness. Nothing tricky about it. It actually just kind of wiggled right out. You don't have to really squeeze anything. Even though it looks like there is a little clip, it really just came right out. So that was real simple. Go ahead and get yourself a T20 hex screw remover, and we're gonna go ahead and loosen up the 4 screws. All right, so we got the old, or I should say original unit. My car is a 2016, so this was out of a 2016. I imagine the 2017 and possibly the early 2018s are gonna look like this too. Pretty thick, got a nice heatsink on it here. The new unit looks quite a bit thinner, actually. Doesn't have quite as big of a heatsink. Something to note is that there is a new female adapter on the new unit. It's a little bit different than the one on the old. That's why the kit came with a harness. As you can see, this female end of the harness matches the original unit. So we'll plug that into the original connector there. And then this side of the harness obviously is going to go into your new charging pad right here. Okay, so first thing, I'm just going to go ahead and do this now just to show you guys. This is the harness and the original adapter, that's connected to the car. I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the new harness as such. Snaps right in, ready to go. So you want the adapter facing to the front of the vehicle. This black flat surface obviously is going to be facing upwards. And you can see, if we line up the holes here, it fits pretty well, pretty flush into the existing unit in the car. So I was able to hand tighten 2 of the screws, kind of get it so it's staying there. Now I'm gonna get back underneath it here and tighten them up and get the other 2 in there. All right, once you got all 4 on there, make sure it feels snug and tight. And then you're gonna wanna go ahead and, with your new harness already plugged into the original wiring, with the red tab down, like this, these 2 pointers sticking down, I'm gonna go ahead and insert that into the new charging pads female input. There we go. And you should hear a nice snap. It should snap in place. And then you actually want to push that red prong in to kind of lock it in place. All right, so I went ahead and used duct tape. Used yellow so you guys could see better. I went ahead and wrapped where the harness is plugged into the original cable. I don't want this thing banging around in there making noise. Hitting up against the metal or something else that's plastic. Now from lifting the unit up, you can see that the front of the console kind of shifted forward a little bit. So we're going to want to make sure we kind of push that back forward, and then we will work on getting this back underneath the rear seat. All right, so getting this back underneath the rear seat is pretty tricky. I'm using my interior trim removal tool to kind of pry it back in. I'm going to try to set up the camera here so you guys can see me work the way the rest of it back in here. All right, so I kind of got the passenger side corner in. I'm just going to keep working the driver's side in. I would highly recommend you guys get a set of these so that you don't scratch up your car. Use them like a flathead screwdriver, like I mentioned earlier. It sure makes this job a lot easier to slowly kind of work its way back in there, so you don't rip the leather. And we're getting close. Come back over here to the passenger side. Just kind of slowly work your way back in there. Don't force it. Okay. You got it? All right, there we go. So, didn't rip the leather. And it's back in there nice and smooth. So, the next step, we're gonna go ahead and put our 6 total 10mm bolts back in to tighten up the console. So something I should have mentioned, before we put the bolts back in, I would recommend you guys actually go ahead and start up the car at this point. And if you have an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 10, go ahead and set it on the unit and make sure that it's charging. I'm kind of future-proofing my car. I actually don't have access to an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 10 right now, or otherwise I would show you guys. But go ahead and before you bolt everything back in, get a phone, make sure it charges properly before you put in the bolts and kind of have to take everything back out. So I'm going to do both the 10mm bolts in the rear part of the console, and then we'll move to the front and get the 2 bolts back in the front, both driver and passenger side. Just wanted to make a note, when you guys are tightening these bolts back in, I mean, they're pretty heavy duty bolts, and you're tightening into the steel of the car, but you're tightening in a plastic console. So make sure it's snug, you know, a couple fingers tight. Don't really put all your weight into it, otherwise you'll end up cracking your console, which you don't want to. All right, got all the bolts in. Got those little plastic covers in the back, snap back in place. One of the last steps is putting your knee pads back on. Remember the clips, you know, they need to go down to those 2 holes. So start from top, get them lined up, and then just snap it into place. That's it, pretty simple. And you're gonna wanna do the same thing with the passenger side. Go ahead and snap that in place. Make sure you're nice and secure. Okay. Everything's back in place. Console feels pretty secure. Final step, obviously other than testing it again if you can, if you have the phone, is to go ahead and put your rubber cover back in place, and you should be good to go. Alright guys, hopefully this was helpful. I don't think it was really too difficult. You could probably knock this thing out in 20 minutes or less. And thanks for watching my video. Have a good one.